exit. We love sharing our knowledge. We love helping, whether it be for mental health conversation. It's a journey you don't have to take alone, or just business advice, whatever it is. Please reach out. We're here to help, or at least we know of somebody that probably can help you, which is the most important thing in our ecosystem. Also, I just want to give a little shout out to what's scrolling along the bottom. Founders Coffee. It's been running for 7.5 years. Every Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. at Red's Diner in Kensington. If you are a founder, an entrepreneur, a startup, come on out. We are there. Lots of other entrepreneurs are there. It's just meant to just meet like-minded people. So again, every Tuesday, 7:30 a.m., check her out, and we'll go from there. Well, I am excited about this conversation. I met Rylan many, many years ago through the blockchain consortium and through the UFC blockchain committee. So we've done some work together. His story is going to be, I think it's inspirational. We just did a 10K walk. We'll probably get into that. So I just want to say, Rylan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming to share your story. And how are you today?
I'm doing well. Firstly, I'd like to thank you, Jade, for having me on the show and you know having this opportunity to share my story and reach a wider audience.
Well, I think it's a great story, right? I mean, it's some of you've been in the tech industry. You obviously tech. You're at the university. When I met, we were in a wheelchair, and when we first talked, I didn't even know that there was even an option for you to walk again. It's not something that we talked about. It's not something that we discussed. So I just what I want to do is, I think this is going to be a lot of you talking today and less of me, and that makes for a good show. So I want you to tell a little bit of your background and your story before we kind of get to the point where we met, and I want to just say the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So I'll do a quick introduction of where I'm at right now. So I'm a university student at the U of C. I'm a dual major in finance and computer science. But my story started over 13 years ago. So I grew up in Alberta, a very active child, played competitive soccer in Tier 1 travel ball across Western Canada. Was fortunate to ski a lot growing up. And then that all changed when I was 11 and a half. I had a rare genetic disorder that, was triggered. And, it happened at the end of April. And by that summer, I couldn't walk and I ended up in a wheelchair. So that was quite the drastic change as a very young, adolescent slash child. Moving forward from there, we're making this a little more of a monologue. Over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, we ran into more issues. I lost the ability to use my hands, lost the ability to talk for over 6 to 9 months. My family's originally from central Alberta. We had to relocate to Calgary at the Alberta Children's Hospital. Truly wonderful facility and grateful that it's here in, our province. And then from there, was in the hospital for over 1,000 years as a patient, or sorry, 1,000 days as a patient,
Hmm.
and then transitioned back into the community. And then I guess carrying forward from there, I was still in a wheelchair for a very long time, did high school in Calgary, graduated. You can see on my LinkedIn, I had a surgery after high school. I took my gap year to go back to the hospital. And there was a kind of an experimental shot in the dark, throwing a arrow or a dart with a blindfold on a little bit to see if it could get me back up and walking. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out the way it was initially thought to have, and it kind of set me back a little bit, caused a bit of nerve damage. And that is where I ended up meeting you at the very beginning of those stages when I started to reintroduce post COVID into the university. I was involved with the Blockchain Society at the University of Calgary, and that's how we started to cross paths. That's the background a little bit there.
That is. No, there is a little bit of background. So I'd like to kind of touch base on, what you were going through or what you were feeling, and what you thought. I know you were a little younger. I guess maybe a reflection back to, maybe you understand it a little bit better now. Obviously I've never been through anything like that. I fractured a few vertebrae in my thing, and I had to start walking, but not obviously nearly as, what happened to you. So is there anything that reflected back, like when you look at it now, that says, wow, that's something that, why me, or anything along those lines?
I think in the beginning I had those moments. I was 11, 12, 13 years old, went from playing very competitive sports, tracking to do that, at a very high level. A lot of my friends, fast forward, they went and played either in the US for competitive soccer. One of my friends went over to Europe to play in a one league down from what would be like the Premier League. So we had a very competitive group of kids there. So there was a little bit of that why me for the first 6 months when your life kind of deteriorates. Um, you move to a new city, you don't really, nobody your own age, you're living in a hospital, and all your friends are out doing fun things and pushing for where they were. But then eventually you come to a point where you've accepted where you are and then figure out what's the next steps. And I think a lot of medical professionals were more, realistic with their expectations of, you know, you're going to figure out life in a wheelchair, figure out how to function and make the best life that you can physically, right? And I always had
Yeah.
this belief that I would get back to walking, and I never lost that. I, I don't know where along the lines that came from. Maybe it was like the delusional belief of just trying to get back to where I was because I was quote unquote missing out and was kind of grasping on that hope. But the big thing I reflected on is the power of hope and the once you get the ball rolling a little bit, how fast things can change with a little bit of momentum in the right direction.
Well, let's talk about that hope. I know because you were younger, maybe it was good that it happened when you were younger, right? Maybe you didn't understand it, maybe you didn't get it, and there is that like hope or light at the end of the tunnel. How much did that drive you? Like, what was your goal always saying, I am going to walk again? That is the only thing that I want to do in life. Or was it kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to, if it happens, it happens. I'm going to carry on with my life, become the best person I can be, get an education, or whatever the aspirations of that time of your life were.
I'd say it comes in ebbs and flows based off where you can physically get feedback on. So I'll elaborate a little bit.
Yeah.
Coming out of the hospital, went back into high school into Calgary, and you know, grade 10. At that time, I skipped a lot of schools. So, grade 9, grade 10, I played catch up academically because I didn't attend school for 3 years. Like, I just didn't. Like, technically in the hospital, there's a school, but I didn't really necessarily do a whole lot of education while in the hospital. So there was a little bit of catch up on that end, and the body wasn't quite there, if that made sense. Like there was still a lot of nerve issues, there was still a lot of pain in the body. So I kind of shifted gear with saying, okay, I will figure out how to do this, but let's change the attention. Let's focus on where I can make differences in my life that's tangible at that time. So that's more the mental side, learning, going out that way. And then grade 11 and 12, I pushed very hard. Like I skipped a significant amount of schools, and every spare I had or every option class that I could physically take online, I did. And then the rest of the time I spent at a physio clinic and really pushing forward for there.
So how was that mentally? Like how did you adapt to something like that? Was, moving into high school? High school can be challenging at the best of times for anybody. So how did you manage that? How did you manage that expectations? Like who like you obviously would have had support from your family and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the people maybe around you and how they helped you and how they supported you to hopefully, I'm guessing there were probably some bumps in the road and some challenges and setbacks and tough times. Like how did you and your people around you help you overcome those?
So I'll go forward on that. Kind of go through it. My stage to walking I had in my mind was going to be a lot quicker. Probably like most young people, you had an expectation that you could, solve the world's problems in, 6 months, when realistically it takes a little bit longer. So for myself, I wanted to walk across my grad stage. That was the goal I set out in grade 10 and really push forward from that. So who supported me along the way? My family was a major, major supporter, but also my peers in my grade. I remember this going into grade 9. I wasn't using my hands at that time. I actually had to type on a computer with my toes to communicate
Mhm.
properly and like write down things and do schoolwork. And, growing into grade 9, there's a lot of, you know, things are changing for a lot of students, and there's always, a lot of glances, looks, and all that. I'd say that I was very thankful that the school and the teaching side was, they're going to take a half an hour out of the class time. You go tell the story to your like your peers, because then they'll understand. Because initially, you know, it's different. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in society, I think the natural human reaction is either curiosity or they're a little nervous. So they're always standoffish. So you either have somebody that's super, super excited and wants to know everything, or you have people that are more standoffish. So I was very thankful for the teaching side that they were able to take that time out of the classroom, allow me to share my story. And then, there's still a handful of those students that, I graduated 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, and then we still see each other once a month. Like, they're lifelong friends.
No, well, that's good. I mean, it's always good to have such support around you, right? From family and friends to be there, because it's not always going to be a straight path forward, I guess, right?
So up and down bumps along the way. So, back to the whole building momentum thing from grade 10, 11, 12, everything was trending in the right direction. Like, school was getting significantly easier. you know, I got back to driving after a very long time. I wrote my test, got my license, and as a young adult, having the ability to drive yourself, that was a really, really big thing. And the final thing I had to do was to check the list, was to walk across the stage. Now, knowing my story a little bit with LinkedIn, that didn't happen. And that was a very, very difficult realization in my life, where I sat back and I was like, all right, what are we going to do now? That's not great. Um, and the place where grad was, there was a bunch of stairs to get to the stage, and I couldn't walk, and there was a lot of logistical issues. And I sat back and I was like, well, you have to realize sometimes that even if you do everything right, it you don't get the result. But it's not necessarily you chasing the result that makes the mind frame or the determination or the patterns and consistency. It's showing up along the way. But yeah, to my point, it was very difficult, but my peer group was great. Is they actually built probably one of the most complex ramps that I have ever seen. And like, the guys in my high school literally were carrying sheets of plywood and 2x4s into the building, because they only rented it for like 4 hours. So they carried the stuff in, built the ramp, and then the minute our grad was done, all the guys got back together and they were disassembling the ramp and hauling it back to the handyman's truck. So it's the people around you that get you through the very difficult times. Of like, yeah, I didn't achieve it. It was a hard time, but it's really that like mentality of like, we got your back even if you don't get through things, and keep pushing, you're on the right direction.
And I think that's very, you know, a very, I'm sure it was very emotional for you, obviously, to not achieve that goal, to walk across the stage to get your diploma and that. But again, having a good support group and good buddies to kind of do something for you that made it incredible, and still get that experience, and and be able to get your diploma. And then obviously it took a little longer than you thought. So let's talk about, like, after grad. So you didn't get that, and you still have that in your mind. Your goal is to walk, and now you're going to be going to University of Calgary. You're going to be obviously looking at certain aspects of, you know, university life, things along those lines, that, you know, challenges of doing things on your own. Maybe some courses can be done by correspondence. The challenge of getting around a university. I mean, I know guys like Sean and Nabil who are, you know, in a wheelchair here in Calgary. You know, some of their goals, their business life is actually making it easier for people to pedest around, whether it be Calgary universities, things along those lines. So once you kind of got into university, how did how did your goal of walking again change, and how did you know, being involved at university, you know, did that help accelerate it, or or you know, you kind of almost change a little bit of group of friends when you actually take that step from high school to university?
So I'll take a quick step back. I took a 2 year gap between high school and university doing
Okay.
more of experimental surgery. And that surgery was like me rolling the dice of, if I do this and it goes well, I'll be walking within 12 to 18 months. Unfortunately, it went the entirely opposite way, and everything that could have went wrong did go wrong. And why I'm bringing that up is, leading into this, there was a lot of positive momentum. And in life, you got to roll the dice sometimes. At least that's my opinion. And my story now is one of that is okay. He rolled the dice. He's forward momentum and all that. But there was a point where I rolled the dice and I lost, and it was that was one of the more lower parts of my life. Was I had a bunch of fractured bones. My nerves were like significantly in a bad position. Like they were inflamed and significant pain around those lines. And then there was kind of a period where why I'm saying this is there's periods of times in your life where everything kind of goes wrong, and you don't know where it's going to end, where like the downward spiral, quote unquote. Just know
Yeah.
with time, everything kind of like smooths out. Be patient and find a new heading and head in that direction. COVID hit. I've been very thankful in a weird way that school went online because I was able to start university a year earlier. Because at that time, leaving the house, going to university classes, and functioning that I am today would have been nearly impossible at that time. So very thankful for that end. Started university online. So again, my peer group is older than me. They're in third year. I'm starting first year and online, but everyone's starting online. So what's interesting in that one was I was able to make a lot of friends, even though I wasn't in school or never really communicated with them in person. So I think that was an unforeseen blessing in my life directly that had significant complications in everybody else's. Um, and then yeah, rolling into school, I think having some other focus that is not a physically demanding is very important. Like I would say, you need three kind of escapes in life. You need something that challenges you physically, something that challenges you mentally, and then something that challenges kind of your heading in life. Like where do you want to go? Some people say that's spirituality. Some people say that's more philosophy, but kind of on that same on track. And rolling into a new peer group with a new group, the big thing for me was joining school clubs, making sure you're willing to stay a little bit longer at school, make those connections with peers. And, it's really people, like having that support group of people really helps out.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You know, whether your case or anybody's case, or an entrepreneur looking for help or struggling or whatever it is, there's always somebody that, you know, that's out there that has been through it, that can be there for you, and listen to, you know, to what you're going through. Not, you know, not share their own experiences, but just be there to, you know, to help out a buddy or help out a friend or help out a colleague.
Yeah. And I'd say again, like whether it's business, personal life, whatever it is, it's about finding good people that will help you through, anything you go through in life.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So now, I mean, obviously you're in university, things are going well. At what point did you say that, okay, you know what, now's that time to, you know, maybe we had a little bit of a setback and it was a difficult time, and you did it just say, you know what, there's something new. This is something. How did that all come to fruition to say, I'm going to do this? I found a good doctor, or I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so I'd say, always had that belief, that kind of long off fantasy, delusional belief that I'd walk, even at the lowest moments. I didn't know how, I didn't know where I was going to do that, but I was going to make sure it happened. Two, had a great medical team. My doctor's out of COP, 10 out of 10, and he has gone above and beyond on my medical case to really work with me and be very creative because I'm not the traditional, medical case by any means. Leading into this, I'd say there was probably a 2 year period where there was a lot of recovery and I couldn't really do a whole lot of rehab because of the physical state of my body. And then I started to do physio slowly, like it would be twice a week, 3 hours, then it was 4 hours. And kind of throughout my university period of time, it was the balancing act of pushing physio without causing, bodily harm that set you back. So one of the big ones to explain to the audience is I had nerve damage. If you push nerve damage too long, you inflame the nerve and then you have bad results, which is either pain or reduction in motor control because, it swells. Eventually, I hit the tipping point where it was kind of you hit the point where this wasn't going to get better on its own and it needed intervention. Like it wasn't just a body was going to heal itself. My doctor here in Calgary, went around and read a bunch of research articles and went around different hospitals. Was very fortunate that he found one down in Houston, Texas this last September. And for me, I really had to look in the mirror and say, am I going to go all in again? Am I going to go move to the States? Am I going to take arguably almost a year off school, delay my degree, put my life on hold in a sense, and, you know, roll the dice because who knows where this is going to go. So I'd say last August and September, I was on internship, life was going good, I was back driving, starting to regain a lot of the things and ability to do activities that I did in high school. But I sat back and there was always that itch or like that desire to say, no, I want a little more. Like if I had this goal to walk, how am I going to do this? So last September was fortunate enough, went to Houston. They did some procedural, I guess, surgery or day surgeries along the nerve to help it, go through those symptoms and reduce the inflammation around it. And then, within a matter of 8 weeks, I got the ability to stand. And then, one single step turned into 10 kilometers, just about 6 months later. So, um, a lot of it is just having that belief, having that hope, and also be willing to kind of just focus on one thing. Like there was a weird thing this happened this year is like when I made that decision in August, I was going to see it through to the end, no matter how it went. I said I was going to make sure that this was going to go. I don't know the outcome, but I'm going to dedicate my next X amount of time in my life. I said 12 months and see what happens.
So that I know you kind of skipped a few from first one step to 10K.
Yeah.
No pun intended there. But I mean, what was like when you made that first step? There must have been something that says, "Oh my God!" Like what was going through your mind when you took that first step? We'll get to the 10K
Okay.
eventually, but
Yeah.
let's talk about that first step. I mean, there had to have been the emotions, the endorphins, I can't, like your family, your friends. I mean, well, what was the feeling around you and your feeling?
Yeah, I would say, it was significant amount of pain for call it 7 weeks leading up to that, to get to that stage. So I would say it was a slight relief that I was like, wow, okay, like it paid off. And then it was almost like disbelief in a sense, like it didn't feel real the first time around. If I'm being transparent, like the physio that I was working with, they actually was they recorded it for me because they were like, "You're going to want this." I was initially like, why would I want to record this? Like,
Mm.
I'm gonna just like get up and go. And now looking back, I was like, I'm very thankful they did that. It was almost like the disbelief a little bit on that end. And then, my mind's always, okay, you got a result. Now what's the next result? So, over the course of that next 6 months, it was small incremental gains that I just kept pushing the envelope of whatever was physically possible. And a lot of that comes down to like just consistency. And there were days that I didn't want to do it, my body didn't want to do it, but it was just forcing yourself to do a program and going out. And again, I was very thankful to have a great medical team that, that program changed every 7 to 10 days, and they were willing to meet with me on a Saturday. They were willing to meet with me either like 6 a.m., 6 p.m., just to kind of fit me in around their normal practice, because a lot of things would change. And dealing with specialists, sometimes you have to wait 2.5, 2 months, right, to go in. But I was very thankful that my medical team would be willing to meet with me and change as my body changed over the time period. But it was truly one of the most amazing moments now looking back that I've had in my life.
Oh, that's amazing. So the rehab, obviously, did you do a lot of it in Houston, or did you come back here? And at what point did you say, you know what, I'm going to take that 10-kilometer walk? That is going to be my goal. That is the achievement that I want. And how much time, energy, and effort did it take to get there?
Yeah, so one thing I always say is things will always go wrong in life. Like there will always be little derailments along the way. So um, I was, took my first steps, ready to get rolling. And then the next Wednesday, I was down in the States, and they had some issues around staffing at the clinic because it's private healthcare. And they reduced my time by over 50% for the rehab. And I was like, okay, that's not good. When is this going to be resolved? And they were like, well, we don't know. So I again, rolled the dice, and I called the doctor back in Canada and say, can we make an impromptu kind of on the spot physio for like 10 days from now? And this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. Can we figure out what to do? So very thankful to be, had a great support network around there. I had the ability to use some students that were going through physio school or kinesiology. And I kind of just parsed together a bunch of different people for time to work through this. And then were the 10K, to answer your question, I'd say November through January, setting that routine was very difficult. That was one of the harder times in my life that I went through. And just really just pushing that. And then I wanted to find a bullseye to target towards, because, after going in and going out day after day after day, there was a point in my life where I sat back and like, I need something more, because I'm not going to be able to keep pushing this 6 days a week for 5 to 6 hours a day if I don't have something bigger than just me, in a sense, or that incremental gain in a week or two. So I was like, okay, I did the Calgary Marathon last year. I wheeled it. So why don't I do the 10K? It was a little coin thing from a marketing side. I wanted to look back. Um, Someone close to me advised me, look back and be thankful for who helped you out along the way. And that's how I came across the Vive Pain Center at the Children's Hospital. They were the clinic that kind of really turned it around for me at the very beginning when I was young, at 13, that ended up getting me back into school, back into society. So it started off as, I'm going to do 10 kilometers to raise $10,000 for this clinic at the Children's Hospital. And it gives me a target for rehab to keep pushing through the days I don't want to. It does some good work in society, and it also, puts back to a place that really has helped me out when I was at my lowest.
No, and I saw I saw the grin on your face as we were also a little bit of nervousness before we started that 10K walk. Yes, I mean, but it was I mean I probably 30 people were there. I'm guessing somewhere around there. That were going to do the walk with you, and I mean that must have felt felt positive and giving you a great feeling that there was going to be some friends and family and colleagues and buddies, that were there to kind of do that for you. You did the walk, you made it all the way through. What was it? I saw that big shit grin on your face when I saw the photos and things along those lines. Like, what was the feeling to walk through that finish line after doing that walk?
Truly amazing. Like, you know, the support that I've gotten along the way from, close friends, colleagues, and then also just complete strangers has been truly remarkable. And this has gone significantly larger and farther than I ever expected. But I'm very thankful that Calgary and the community has supported it. Now, the day of the race, there was nerves and there was excitement. There was a lot of emotion because prior to this, I'll be transparent, I actually never did the 10K and I couldn't really train for it because I had a fractured foot leading into this. So I was swimming a little bit. I was trying to keep cardio up, but at morning of, I was like, we're just gonna go as hard as I can, push as hard as I can, and see what happens. And crossing that finish line, there was a lot of adrenaline, a lot of emotion, and it was truly a very special moment to have all those people around me that has supported me along the journey.
No, and yeah, it's great, and I mean you need that, and whether it's going for what you're through, whether you're starting a business, whether you're have whatever it is going on in your life, you need support, you need people, but you also have to realize that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, and be able to reach out and say, hey, I need a shoulder right now, or can you go for a coffee with me? You got a second or two? So I mean, it's so positive to hear, what, your journey. It's inspirational to many, and whoever's listening out there or listening to this in the near future, it's something, there's some lessons and some great things here. So what's next for you now for, short term?
Yeah, I'd say this is just the beginning for me. I was never really supposed to get this far. I got over 23 no's from medical professionals saying, hey, like, just create the best life you can. You're not going to walk. And, for me, it's really pushing that envelope. So the 10K was a start. By the end of this year, I want to go out and hike a mountain in September, Haling. And then, this next Christmas, like I said at the very beginning, I skied a lot growing up. And that was truly some of those memories that I held on for with hope of like skiing on a powder day, you're weightless. It's something you just don't forget. This next winter, I want to get back out on the slopes.
Oh wow, that's an incredible goal. Incredible goal. So you say you want to go hiking. What who do you want? Is it going to be this kind of the same group? Who are you going to hike with?
I think it's gonna be a little smaller group. Hiking a mountain. We're gonna try to pick a day that's a little less busy and congested for it, and keep the group a little smaller, and go out and do it, and maybe metaphorically or literally, life's about climbing a mountain and reaching the next peak, only to realize that you're at the bottom of the next valley in a sense. So for me, it's kind of realizing that this is my mountain to climb, and once I hit that top, it's see what's next. Stay tuned.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me know when your hike is. I'm sure a few people would join you if you want them to.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd be more than willing. I need a few people to carry my water for me. I'm trying to keep it as light as possible for myself.
Oh, I know. Like Ian commented on made a comment here, and maybe he'll join us, or who knows? We could maybe get a little bit of a tech crew that can come up there and join you if that's something that you're interested in.
Absolutely.
So, again, I really appreciate you coming on here, Rylan, talking about your story, sharing your story. It is an inspiration. I think as I said, there are many messages and many learnings from this. And I always ask the same question at the end, but I'm just going to put a little different spin on it, because it's not sort of from an entrepreneurship sort of view. But, if you had one piece of advice from somebody who heard 23 no's, or somebody who is just maybe, just getting a little frustrated and struggling to get to that next level, what would it be?
I have two pieces of advice. One, don't lose hope of your dream or vision. No, it's way out there. I coined the term on one of the podcasts or interviews I did. I call it being delusionally optimistic. Is you have to be crazy enough that nobody else is really going to believe your goal. Even my close friends were like, I don't know if this guy's going to walk. But you have to be optimistic enough and believe in yourself to do it and realize that the path's going to change. It's not going to be like a highway in Saskatchewan where you're from, where it's just straight and narrow and it's going to go on for 100 kilometers and
What?
you already know the path. It's going to wind and weave and go up and down. There's going to be super steep valleys and there's going to be high highs, but you got to figure out what that heading is for you. And then two, you have to find people that are willing to pick up the phone call when you really need it, people that are willing to celebrate those wins and be there for the lows when you're there. And it really comes down to finding a tight knit group of people that you can rely on, and have your best interests at heart and willing to push you when you needed to be pushed, or be there for you when you need somebody to talk to and a shoulder to lean on.
No, that's awesome. That's great advice. And I can say, out of 400 or so episodes, I've never heard be delusionally optimistic. And I might steal that from you.
Yeah, it was just a conversation that kind of slipped out with when I was having a conversation, and I was like, hey, that actually came out okay and sounded
Yeah,
interesting. So
it came out okay. It does sound. I like that term. That's for sure. But yeah, I do. I mean, and thanks for sharing that advice. And I mean, again, that's part of the reason why, started Founders Coffee, to be there, to have somebody to talk to be around like-minded people, to be around good people. And again, anybody wants to come out 7:30 a.m. Anybody wants to reach out and learn more about Ryan. Rylan, is his LinkedIn is in the comments section, so just click on it and go from there. But yeah, you know what, Rylan, this has been a great conversation. I've been looking to it for a while. You're an inspiration to many of us. So thank you for being out there. Thank you for sharing your story. And we didn't even get into getting your pilot license, but maybe once your pilot license is done, that's maybe another episode.
fair enough. I'll make a LinkedIn post about it when I'm done. How about
Well,
that?
that sounds like a plan. And again, everybody, thank you for joining. Again, you want to reach out to Ryland, feel free. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and of course, we kind of have a long weekend coming up here. So I hope everybody has a great long weekend, and we will be back next week. So, Ryland, enjoy the rest of your day, my friend, and we'll chat soon.